I'd now like to introduce Professor Kim Delbaere. Some of you will know Kim through the research work that she's been doing, and she's the Senior Research Fellow at Neuroscience Research Australia. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Lorraine, and thanks everyone for being here. It's wonderful to see such a big turnout. I'll be chairing the next session, and the first lecture honours the late PAM Albany, who was a passionate advocate for accident and injury prevention in her various roles. She was the key facilitator for promoting evidence-based practice through the New South Wales Falls Policy and Falls Prevention program and network. And it's my absolute honour to introduce our 2023 PAM Albany guest lecture today. Professor Anne Tiedemann is a professor of physical activity and health in the Faculty of Medicine and Health at the University of Sydney. And Anne's research really develops and evaluates scalable physical activity-based strategies to promote health and prevent falls from middle age all the way to older age. And Anne's current research includes the first trial internationally to evaluate the effect of yoga, but we have to wait a little bit to hear on that one. But what we hear about today is all her wonderful work that she has done in relation to physical activity for healthy aging and fall prevention, and translating evidence into action.
Thanks very much, Kim, for that warm welcome. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I am truly honoured to be giving the PAM Albany lecture today. Pam was a passionate ambassador for advocating for fall prevention, and she really was very inspiring in terms of her other public health work. So thank you to the New South Wales Falls Prevention and Healthy Ageing Network for giving me the honour to present this lecture. So as Kim said, I'll be talking about physical activity for healthy ageing and fall prevention. Unfortunately, I don't have the results of the big yoga trial yet, but that will come sometime this year. So really what the aim of this presentation is to give you some key learnings that we've had from our recent physical activity promotion trials in terms of how we can do a better job of promoting healthy ageing with physical activity in our everyday clinical practice and policy. If I can get, there we go. So I'm sure you'd all agree that physical activity is good for our physical and our mental health. And it really is an investment in our future health, but it's also important for the short-term benefits that it brings. So we know that it reduces the risk of many chronic conditions such as heart disease, stroke, reduces the risk of diabetes, but it also helps to manage diabetes, reduces the risk of developing obesity, and also reduces the risk of several cancers such as breast cancer and bowel cancer. And as we all know here, exercise, which is a subset of physical activity, is really key for preventing falls in older age. But physical activity also promotes many other benefits. So it promotes brain health, reduces the risk of dementia, but also promotes concentration and clear thinking. It promotes social connection. It's really important for maintaining our musculoskeletal system, so our bones and our muscle strength. It improves our sleep, it makes us happy, it promotes connection and community, and importantly, if we're active in our younger years, we're more likely to stay independent into our older age. So it's really a great investment. Unfortunately, despite this clear evidence of the benefits of physical activity, we know that we're living in quite an inactive world. So the latest report from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows that around 50% of older adults in Australia are insufficiently active. We also know that globally around 5.3 million deaths per year are due to inactivity. And physical activity has been identified as having similar importance as a modifiable risk factor for chronic disease as things like obesity and tobacco. It also comes at a huge economic cost. It's also been described as a pandemic back in 2012 by the Lancet special issue. So this is not the first pandemic that we've been living under. So the importance of physical inactivity has been recognised by the World Health Organization. So the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity was released in 2018, and this recognises that to increase physical activity across the globe, we need a systems-based approach. There's no single policy that will have a solution to this complex issue. So the Global Action Plan on Physical Activity includes 4 objective areas. The aim of the GAPA is to promote active societies, active environments, active people and active systems. And importantly, what GAPA demonstrates is that this massive issue of physical inactivity can't be solved by simply targeting individual behaviours. We need a broader approach that targets all of these factors that contribute to this problem. And I think that the next talk by Francis will touch on the need for a systems-based approach. Now, my research really targets the number 3 objective of creating active people, and this is through programs and services that can support people to be more active. We also have clear guidance around how much physical activity is important for maximising our health. So in 2020, the global guidelines were released, and this is a synthesis of all of the enormous amount of research that has pointed to the benefits of physical activity. So in terms of older people, the guidelines recommend that all older people should undertake regular physical activity. In terms of the specific details, in terms of the aerobic physical activity component, the recommendation is to take part in around 150 to 300 minutes of physical activity per week. And this is in the moderate intensity category, examples include brisk walking, or the other alternative is to take part in 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity activity. So an example of that would be running, for example. In addition, it's recommended that all older adults take part in muscle strengthening on at least 2 days of the week for all of the major muscle groups. And importantly, it's recommended that adults should take part in functional balance and strength training. And we all understand here the importance of that for preventing falls and maintaining independence in older age. There's also a recommendation around limiting sedentary time. So older adults should limit the amount of sedentary time and replace sedentary time with physical activity of any intensity. And so what this shows is that even low intensity activity is beneficial and can be a way of limiting that sedentary time. Now I'm hoping this video, oh good, it looks like it might work. So I've got a nice video here from the WHO, it's very short, that just summarises the message from the guidelines and how we should be promoting it, physical activity to everybody really. Okay, so if you take one message away from my talk today, it could be that one, that every move counts. So movement in any way is beneficial for us. So how can we be part of the solution to this physical inactivity crisis? What I'm going to do now is give you some key learnings from 3 of our current and recent research studies. So I'm going to be talking about the Active Women Over 50 project, the Coaching for Healthy Ageing trial, and the Successful Ageing Yoga trial, some preliminary results from the trial. So Active Women Over 50, first of all. So this was a pilot trial. It was led by my PhD student, Geraldine Wallbank. And the background to this is that we know that being active earlier in life promotes independence and better outcomes in older age. But middle-aged women in particular often they juggle carer and work demands, and it's often difficult for them to be active. And so a tailored support could be needed to really promote activity in this group. So the aim of this trial was to pilot test the acceptability, the feasibility and the impact on physical activity of this program that we developed, which involved online information and support. It's all delivered remotely, and we were targeting women over 50 living in the community. So we recruited 60 women to the pilot. I'll just tell you a little bit about the intervention. So in addition to the website, which I'll talk about in a minute, we had one session of telephone-based health coaching, which was delivered by a research physio trained in health coaching. Then participants received access to either text messages or email-based messages that provided motivation, drew people back to the website, and provided tips around being more active. And so the whole program was developed with reference to the COM-B framework of behaviour change, which looks at capability, opportunity and motivation as being factors that influence a person's behaviour. So we developed this website for the study. You can see the front page there. Basically, the idea with the website was to not only provide information about why it's important to be active, but also tools and strategies on how people can be active. So we have different pages here: why be active, how to be active, and then the Be Inspired section. We linked to other tools and ways that people could track their activity, classes that they could be involved in, other strategies like that. On the Be Inspired page, we recorded video case studies of women in this cohort or this age group that had managed to be active, and the benefits they felt and the barriers that they overcame. And we hoped that this would inspire the users to be able to relate to these people and to find some ways to motivate themselves. So we followed people up for 3 months. It was a pilot study, so we were really looking at acceptability, feasibility, and looking at any evidence of impact on physical activity. So what we found was that 83% of the participants would recommend it. We found high uptake to the intervention components, high data completion, and also participant retention, so people seem to really like it. And importantly, we did see an impact on daily steps and MVPA. The participant feedback was, there was a lot of positive feedback, things like people enjoyed the email contact. We did encourage people to use activity trackers as part of the trial, and they found that that was encouraging and motivated them to move more. And it helped them to set goals and take part in new opportunities to be active. But there were actually barriers identified as well. So we found particularly health issues came up as a barrier for themselves and also their family. This was conducted before the COVID pandemic, so we didn't have the COVID impact. Things like common barriers are time, lack of motivation, and just trying to fit it all in. So by no means was it a perfect solution, but it tended to help people to be more active. So the key learnings that came out of this project are that behaviour change techniques such as goal setting, feedback and monitoring and social support and other things that we used as part of the program could be implemented into other health promotion interventions for women in this age group. Importantly, that simple, scalable interventions like this, they can be remotely delivered and they allow equity of access and flexibility for women who are located in remote locations, but also people who have multiple responsibilities. And encouragingly, we were recently granted 2 MRFF grants to evaluate this program further. So we'll be conducting 2 large trials, one in urban areas and the other in rural and remote communities, where we'll be recruiting around 1,000 people all up to test the impact of the intervention on physical activity. So watch this space, and if you hear more about it, please spread the word about it when we're recruiting. The next project is the Coaching for Healthy Ageing trial. So this one, the background to this is that when we're increasing physical activity amongst older people, we may also inadvertently increase their risk of falling because they're being exposed to additional hazards in the environment. And this is certainly the case for 2 large randomised controlled trials that aimed to increase walking in older adults. These 2 trials did increase walking, but they also had the side effect of increasing falls. So this led us to wonder whether we need to be promoting fall prevention strategies alongside our physical activity promotion programs. So the aim of the Change trial was to establish the impact of a physical activity and fall prevention program compared with a healthy eating program, and our outcomes were physical activity and falls. We were targeting people aged 60 and over living in the community, and we recruited around 600 people. This was a cluster randomised trial. So again, a bit more detail about the intervention. What we did here was people received a home visit by a research physiotherapist who carried out a fall risk assessment. So they used the quick screen assessment to have a look at any risk factors that the person had. They then developed a fall prevention and physical activity plan, which was developed in consultation or in partnership with the participant. So it looked at their individual goals and motivations for being more active. We provided an information booklet about how to be active and stay on your feet. We didn't use the word falls, so you'll notice it says staying steady. And that was as a result of focus groups that we conducted to develop the booklet, where older people said they didn't want it to be focused on falls. They preferred a more positive message around staying steady or staying independent. We offered people the use of an activity tracker, so a Fitbit activity tracker or a low-tech pedometer. And we also offered access to fortnightly telephone-based health coaching, which was also provided by the same research physiotherapist who conducted the home visit. And this was carried out about once a fortnight for the first 6 months of the intervention, and then monthly for the second 6 months of the intervention. And really the health coaching was there to help to set interim goals for people to reach their final goal that they'd set at the beginning. It was there to workshop solutions to any barriers that had arose for people and stop them being active, and to provide feedback and encouragement to the participants. So the results. So first of all, in terms of physical activity, we did find that physical activity was significantly higher in the intervention group at 6 months and at 12 months when we measured this via steps per day. In terms of the falls, we did find a lower fall rate in the intervention group versus the control group. However, this wasn't statistically significant, so you can see the incidence rate ratio of 0.86 there. We did conduct an exploratory analysis where we looked at the fall prevention effect in people who had had 2 or more falls at baseline, and we did find some evidence that the intervention did have an effect on falls in that higher risk group, but this was underpowered and was only an exploratory analysis. But it does show that perhaps this approach would be appropriate for higher risk people. In terms of results, we've also conducted quite an extensive process evaluation involving qualitative interviews of the participants and of the coaches. This was led by Abby Haynes, who you'll hear from later on today. Most of the 32 participants that we interviewed felt that the intervention did increase their physical activity. They found that they were able to embed their physical activities into daily activities, and it also improved their perceptions of physical activity. They reported that they were motivated by the feedback provided by the Fitbit. They liked the self-directed goals, and they really liked the person-centred coaching to support their behaviour change. It was very hard to find any negative comments about the coaching. It was very, very positive. So if you wanted to learn more or read more, you can go to this publication. Abby also looked at the idea of how therapeutic alliance was built within this trial. So the important question here is, what made the health coaching so positive? Why did people enjoy it? And you can see the themes that came out of the interviews here. So the positive perceptions of the health coaching in particular were around the encouragement that the coaches gave, the way that it was delivered in a person-centred way with respect, the credibility and the professional experience of the research physios was a really key theme, which made people feel really comfortable and in safe hands. They liked the nature of the coaching, the way they interacted with the coaches, the personalities, and the way that the friendliness and the real relationships that developed between the participants and the coaches, and the commitment and the reliability. So they really felt that the coaches tried hard to help them and to come up with solutions that were really individualised. So the key learnings from this trial are that older people do appreciate guidance and support to be more active. We found that therapeutic alliance can enhance the program engagement and adherence, and therefore it should improve outcomes and satisfaction. And really importantly, that older people's motivations for being more active are very diverse. People set a diverse range of goals, anything from being able to walk further so they could travel overseas, to being able to maintain their independence so they could look after their grandchildren. Very diverse, and we need to tap into those individual goals if we're to be successful in promoting physical activity. Okay, and now moving on to the Successful Ageing Yoga trial. So the background to this trial is that yoga is growing in popularity, particularly amongst older women. We know it can improve balance and mobility, but we don't know whether it's effective in preventing falls. So the aim of the SAGE trial was to measure the effectiveness and the cost effectiveness of a group-based yoga exercise program on falls over 12 months, and we compared this to a seated yoga relaxation program. We recruited 700 community dwellers who are aged 60 and over. So the intervention for this trial was group-based yoga. It was over 12 months. It was based on the Iyengar style of yoga, which involves discrete postures. We focused on standing balance postures. Each session was 1 hour in duration, and they were carried out twice a week in a supervised manner. And then we encouraged participants to take part in at least 2 sessions on their own unsupervised to increase the dose of balance challenging exercise, because we know that's important in terms of fall prevention. So this trial started in October 2019, and then by March 2020 we were required to stop all of the face-to-face classes. So it was designed as a face-to-face intervention. We freaked out a little bit, and then within a couple of weeks we carried on and changed our processes and moved online to Zoom. This was surprisingly well received by both the participants and also the instructors, many of whom had never conducted classes online before. In fact, there was benefits to this approach, so we were able to recruit throughout New South Wales and beyond rather than being restricted to Sydney, so it actually boosted our recruitment possibilities. We were a little worried that the social connection that's provided by a group-based experience would be lost, and so we instigated class-based WhatsApp groups so that people could still interact and sort of get to know each other and have that connection. So the stage that we're at now is that we've just sent the data to the statistician to analyse, so it's very exciting. So we don't know yet whether yoga prevents falls. We do know that this program was really well received. We've had feedback from people about the positive effects on their mental and their physical health, and also that it really was important at that time of being in COVID lockdowns to have something regular to take part in and have that connection to other people. We've also conducted a process evaluation involving interviews of participants and instructors, again led by Abby Haynes and also with Heidi Gilchrist. What we found is that in terms of the online delivery of the program, it retained much of the value of the face-to-face program. So participants still felt that they were in a shared experience with other people, even though it was online. As I said, it provided a welcome routine during the COVID lockdowns, and people felt well looked after by the experienced instructors who were delivering the classes. Interestingly, there was a theme of the relaxation, the breathing and the mind-body connection practiced in yoga that was really well received, and actually pointed out by quite a few of the participants that that was one of the things that really drew them to this intervention. So we saw this theme of mindfulness and embodiment. And it's important that maybe other physical activity programs that are developed for older people can have a thought around the mindfulness aspect. We often try and get people to go out of their bodies when we're exercising, but maybe looking within and thinking more of the internal is an important way of enhancing adherence. So the learnings from this trial are that older people can adapt and embrace technology. And Abby Haynes will be talking this afternoon about another study that we did looking at people's use of technology for physical activity. So be sure to have a look and hang around for that later today. And as I said, the mindfulness and embodiment theme could be relevant to other physical activity programs, and certainly other activities such as dance. I can see that there's a similarity there with that theme. We learnt some things along the way about how to deliver online yoga, and this is applicable to other physical activity opportunities for older people. We found that we did need to provide technical support at the beginning in terms of people setting up their systems and also troubleshooting along the way. We had a very patient research assistant on the telephone guiding them through the process. We instigated a one-on-one Zoom chat with all participants prior to starting each of the classes, and this was between the instructor and the participant. And this was a way of getting them to meet each other, have a chat about any individual problems that they felt they had, or any hesitations they had around taking part in the yoga. And it was a way of developing confidence in the participant that this was safe for them to take part in, and also some guidance for the instructor on how they may need to modify the program for that particular person. We limited the class sizes, and we also provided a variety of class times because we found that a lot of people aged 60 and over are still working, so they have competing demands. And as I said, we used the WhatsApp to promote social connection. Okay, so just a bit of a summary of what we've found. I think when thinking about this talk, I had a chat to my staff and really thought about what have we worked out or what have we learnt over the last few years in terms of how do we promote physical activity. And I think one of the key things was that relationships and trust are really crucial. So taking the time to build that relationship, get to know the older person, and you will have benefits in the long term. Asking the right questions and listening to the answers was one of the other things that one of the health coaches mentioned. So asking people what motivates them, why they want to be active. It's not all about what we think they should be doing, it's about what they feel capable of doing and what they're motivated to do. Older people are very diverse in their abilities and their motivations and goals. and their goals are often very different to what our goals would be. We might know the evidence around balanced challenging exercise for fall prevention, but we need to be able to implement that in a sneaky way, in a way, because often older people don't really care about their balance, or they don't recognise that they're at risk of falling. They might have other goals and other motivations, so we need to tap into what their goals are and see how we can meet in the middle. And really, an individualised approach is often more effective than a one-size-fits-all approach. So really, changing physical activity behaviour is complicated. It's difficult, but we know the potential benefits are huge, so it is worth the effort. And I wanted to leave you with these photos of myself and my father, who's quite old now and uses a walking frame. But if I say to him, "Dad, why don't you go to the exercise class at the nursing home?" he's really not interested at all. But if I say, "Dad, would you like to go for a swim?" he's always there, ready to go for the swim, because that's his motivation and that's what he enjoys, and it always puts a smile on his face afterwards. I'd like to acknowledge the amazing team that I work within at the Institute for Musculoskeletal Health. We have a fantastic, dedicated group of people that are working really hard on all of these studies. And I'd just like to acknowledge the funding that I received from the University of Sydney and also from the NHMRC and the MRFF, our fantastic study participants and our staff, and also all of our collaborators. Thank you very much.
We've got a bit of time for questions. Just checking the calendar to make sure, but just a few quick questions. What I would like to also ask you, because I think we didn't mention that at the beginning, is that we have, as in previous years, we have a Slido website where you can enter the code. So if you go to slido.com, and you use the code hashtag FallsForum23, and the F's are capital, you can log in there and post your questions. And I'd also like to welcome the online people. We can't see you, but we know you're there, and it's really fantastic to have you here as well. So feel free to use the Slido website for your questions as well. And I'd like to ask you a quick question. You mentioned motivation and goal setting and how it's different. One thing that we've also noticed within our research is that often people think exercise is not for them, or they can't do it. And it does go more beyond capability, but more around like their perception of themselves and of how an aging person can exercise. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think taking it back to things like what can't you do now that you would like to do? So starting with the goal first, I guess, and trying to help. I think it takes time is one thing, and trying to help the person to imagine life if they could do that activity and the benefits that that would bring. And then also maybe just setting pretty easy or low expectations at first, and then they can see that they can achieve, and they can do things that they're not, they could be surprise themselves. And also I think also around goal setting is getting the person to set a goal, but talking about their confidence in being able to achieve that goal. And if it's not more than an 8 out of 10 confidence, then maybe reassessing the goal and setting something that's more realistic. We don't want to set people up for failure. And so, yeah, having low expectations at first, I guess, is one way to really ease them into it. And drawing on previous experiences. What have they done in the past and been successful at? And how can you link that to the current and what they could do into the future? I don't know if that's answered your question, but that's an approach that we take. Yeah.
Is there a question from the audience before we have the Slido? Anyone who would like to ask a question? Yes?
Thank you. I just wanted to know what would be your advice in regards to working with older people who have had falls and have the fear of falling. So in regards to, I don't know, cognitive behavior therapy or anything like that, because I find that is really a big issue when trying to rehabilitate somebody.
I think I have to defer to the expert on fear of falling here, so I'll let Kim answer that.
Well, it is like with fear of falling, we know that exercise is one of the key elements, but it is all about making sure that people feel supported. And, you know, Anne's programs in relation to coaching would be very helpful there, as well as things like motivational interviewing as well. And so there's another more psychological-based treatment, cognitive behavioral therapy, that can be delivered online as well. Like, there's many online programs. Not that many are focused on fear of falling themselves, but there would be elements about motivation and about achieving things that you would like to do, and that would be helpful in that way. So the combination of the two would be good. But join me, please, in thanking Anne for this wonderful presentation.